I welcome you all to the workshop, and it's going to be about how to defeat the imposter syndrome in leadership with Sonali, the expert for the day. Like you all know, and I'm sure a lot of you are coming from the community. If you're still not there, I urge you to join in. Cool Kanya is a women-oriented community. It's a learning-led community where we come with a three-part promise to learn, connect, and earn. When I say learn, you get to upskill in case you are someone who is interested to upskill and reskill and start off your career in alternative options as well, like in case you're interested to know about video creation, becoming an author, becoming a writer, a digital marketer, start your career as a social media influencer or a content strategist. Cool Kanya is a one-stop shop solution for you. Then we have an amazing community of like-minded women, where you get to engage with the diverse community of women. You can just hop onto the community and ask any question. There will be women and community managers to guide you through. Then you can participate in career-related discussions, discover new ideas and inspiration, get personalized career coaching from industry leaders. So that's that. And then we also help you earn. We help you find a job, and then you can also start a side hustle. So that's pretty much what Cool Kanya has to offer for you. Expert for the day is Sonali Kokra, and she is the Vice President of Engagement at Lido Learning, a published author, journalist, editor, and a media consultant. Now, Sonali has over 12 years of experience in the domain of content and journalism. She's written for reputed international and national publications like Hindustan Times, Indian Express, BuzzFeed, The Quint, Condé Nast Traveler, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, and Grazia. Wow, the list is big. Sonali has authored several books and published her own coffee table book on Shah Rukh Khan, released by the superstar himself. Now, she has also worked as the lifestyle editor of NDTV.com and HuffPost, and as a contributing editor for Harper's Bazaar. As a woman business leader, Sonali feels strongly about women empowerment at the workplace, equal access to opportunities, and female education. So that's the amazing Sonali for you. And we're really looking forward to the workshop. Sonali, the stage is all yours. Please take ahead.
Thank you, Ghazal, and thank you for this opportunity. So essentially, okay, I'm a little taken aback. I'm not just hearing about, oh, she's done this and she's done that. So my imposter syndrome is kicking in a little bit. Before we start, I want to kind of understand, and I want to keep this very, very interactive. I want to at any point in time, if you feel like, that is the point where you really want to ask something, or you want to, stop me there or elaborate on something, please feel free to do that. Before we start, I want just one sort of sense of what is it that you think imposter syndrome is, and then we can take it from there. What has your experience of imposter syndrome? Anybody in the audience, maybe 2 or 3 people can tell me what they think imposter syndrome is, and what has their experience of imposter syndrome been? Who wants to tell me?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes. Okay, so we have answers. Yes, we have somebody saying, thinking low of oneself, that we can't do something, self-doubt. Yes, all of these are true things. I think self-doubt is the most relevant thing to say here. It's not necessarily, at least the way I have experienced imposter syndrome, is not so much about, I can't do something, but it's more about, am I good enough and I'm not good enough? The constant question that I keep thinking in my head all the time is, have I done enough? Do I deserve to be here? Have I just sort of winged it? This whole concept of, okay, maybe I just got lucky. I somehow, at least when I was younger, and I will be honest, actually, when even now, there are a lot of times when I'm still at this point in time, sort of, I still keep questioning, and I still keep wondering if I actually deserve what I have, or did I just keep getting lucky one after the other. One of the things that, that sort of I read this somewhere, I think, or somebody said it to me. I can't recall this specifically. But one of the things that actually stuck in my head was when I read or heard that it's like, have you ever noticed how it's always the same people who seem to be getting lucky like constantly? So do you really think that it's possible that, this person only gets lucky and there is no other factor at play here? But opportunities seem to come only to them. They only seem to be able to wing it and be able to hoodwink everybody into thinking that they are the cat's whiskers when they really don't know anything. So that every time I feel like I'm questioning myself, or every time I feel like I'm, I start feeling self-doubt, and I start feeling that, I don't really deserve to be here. And like someday soon I'm going to be found out. This like constant fear that, someday everybody's going to understand that I don't really know anything. And I've just basically made a fool of everyone and managed to get where I am. Every time that fear sort of starts to creep in, that level of self-doubt starts to creep in, this is the thought that I kind of keep in mind always. Yeah, somebody's agreeing that I'm just lucky to be here. And the thing is, Amrita is agreeing. Yes, like you don't belong, exactly that. The thing is, we all think that only we're the only ones who are feeling it, because everybody tends to look very confident. Everybody tends to seem very confident. One of the things that I used to find really funny when I was younger is that constantly I'd get people telling me that, oh, you come across as such a confident together person. And on the inside, I'd feel so completely the opposite of confident or together. Or I used to feel clumsy. I still do, actually. I used to feel clumsy. I used to feel completely that, I'm constantly nervous. I used to feel like, I never come across as a sophisticated person, that I'm always like sort of fumbling and mumbling and either speaking too fast or too slow or something of that sort. Yeah, exactly. This feeling of, that, oh my God, I'm always embarrassing myself and everybody's looking at me and wondering, okay, what's wrong with her? That sort of a thing. So all of those things is how imposter syndrome sort of used to sort of constantly manifest in me, where I just nothing would ever be enough. There would be no sort of, there'd be no destination that, okay, if I do this or I manage to do that, or if I achieve this or I get to this designation or I earn that much, the goalpost was like constantly moving in my head as to what is going to be enough, what is going to make me feel like I actually do belong where I am. So that is how it was. So give me like maybe a show of hands as to if any of you, or I know that some of you are saying that, yeah, exactly, that's exactly how I feel. But like maybe like we could, are we okay to unmute ourselves, Shruti, Ghazal? Would that be okay? If we can, like, is that something that you can sort of relate to, or is that something, if somebody's had like a different experience, I'd love to hear that, like if there's a different way in which it manifests for you.
Yes, we can put it in the chat box about whatever you want.
No unmuting, just, yeah. We'll address this, Aarti. Actually, I feel it so much that I'm unable to even go back to working. So maybe we can circle back, like let's put a pin in this specific thing. But if it's becoming so debilitating for you that you're not able to get back to work because of it, we should definitely circle back and address this part specifically. And like maybe like we can help with a few tools here and there that might help you with actually dealing with that feeling of why you can't go back. Okay. So I'm just going to move. So this was like this really, this was actually really funny, because I was telling a friend that I'm going to do this, and a very close friend. And I was like, oh my God, like, is it even right for me to do this? Because I constantly feel it. So what am I going to help other people not feel it? And he immediately pulled this up, and actually he's just like, this is the story of your life. This is the constant loop of conversation going on in your head that I shared with like a bunch of other, like a few close friends. That is just like, when I was a child, it used to happen. When I was slightly older, it was the thing. And like when I saw this comic, immediately it made me sort of like, burst out laughing, because it felt so relatable to me. And this whole thing of, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. But somehow I seem to be getting ahead despite having no idea as to how I'm doing it or what I'm doing, or like, and that, like, when you think about it logically, that's not possible. You can't constantly be getting ahead in life. Like, I'm not saying that I'm the cat's whiskers or I'm like, oh my God, amazing. But like, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay, fairly okay, like better than okay in life, in my career. And it's not possible that I don't know anything. I might not know some things. I might not be great at everything, but it's not possible for me to be moving ahead like on a fairly consistent level if I didn't know what I'm doing. So I just like a lot of the times it's simply about reminding myself that that's no matter how strongly I feel I don't know anything and I'm just like sort of cheating the world out of like sort of whatever. It's not possible that that's actually true. Sometimes that's literally the only way that, you know, you just have to use logic and nothing else because you're not going to stop feeling it. Okay. I just want to talk a little bit right now about how we think that, you know, everybody's experience of imposter syndrome is exactly the same. And also as to why certain people feel it in a certain way and certain people, what makes you more susceptible or what makes you more at, I wouldn't want to say risk, but what makes you more vulnerable to feeling it in a more sort of, you know, in a more pointed and in a fairly, you know, like some people would feel it, but not to the point. Like somebody said that, you know, they can't get back to work because of how much they're feeling imposter syndrome. And some people, yes, I mean, you feel it, it's uncomfortable. You don't like the feeling of questioning yourself constantly, but it's not that it comes in the way of what you do. So I want to talk about who are the people who are most likely to experience this imposter syndrome. Women, yes, for sure. I also want to point out that, you know, the factors of caste, class, and community play a very big role. And when you combine women and caste, class, community, it becomes like an even potent sort of intersectionality, becomes like an even potent combination when it comes to how much you feel it. And also the people from the LGBTQ community, mostly because we're not used to, like, until a certain point in time, even now for that matter, we don't have references when it comes to people who look like us or people who had the same experiences or come from the same kinds of backgrounds that we do. We've not seen them sort of be successful outside of a certain sphere. Now, I'll give you my own example. I come from a fairly wealthy family, but I also come from a, like, I'm the first generation of people in my family who's actually had a job outside. I come from a very traditional business family, and like, you know, so in even in my generation, in my family, there are very few women who actually work. So all my life, until the point that I actually got to work, my template of what successful looks like was always a middle-aged man, because it was always the father figures and the brother figures, and, you know, like, it was always a boy or a man or whatever. It was like the image of who's the boss was always a man. The image of who's the rising star was always, like, you know, a brother figure sort of a person. That's, and because the world was, you know, it was changing. I'm not saying that, you know, when I was growing up, I'm not that old that I had no templates or no sort of idols, so to look at, in a manner of speaking, to look at. But as I was growing, there weren't that many women in leadership positions, that there weren't that many women in at the top level. My own family didn't give me that sort of template to see. I didn't have families where, you know, women were sort of killing it outside of the home or whatever. So when you have those combinations going on, so when you're a woman in general, the world is sort of beating you down. You're constantly being made to question yourself in all areas of your life. I'm sure it's not just the workplace. I'm sure most of us feel like a lot of insecurity or a lot of uncertainty or a lot of, like, sort of even this feeling of being the only one who has to do it, like feeling of aloneness in some areas of life or the other. Now, when you combine that with some other mitigating factor. So in my case, it wasn't class, it wasn't caste, but it was just simply the family structure that I came to. Now think about it from the perspective of somebody, if you're a woman, plus you're, say, maybe coming from a very marginalized, if you're coming from the Dalit community or you're coming from like a very, very impoverished background, it's that much harder. You know, not only have you not seen women, you've also not seen like very like underprivileged people sort of rising up the ranks or becoming a big deal. Like, obviously that there is generational wealth and generational privilege has a lot to do with how successful you are in later life. So when you combine that, and then if you put in a third factor like this LGBTQ, this is a typo, but yeah, LGBTQ community, if you like, they go through their own sort of their own series of, or the world has a way of beating them down in another way altogether. Now, if you combine all of these three combinations, it's very difficult to imagine yourself as somebody who's got it together, who's going to be successful, to actually believe in yourself that you could be a leader or you could be the success story in your sort of world, because you don't have references to sort of think about, right? So those were the three things that I really did want to point out, that it's not just about as women, directly, or it's an imperative that all women feel it, but there are a lot of other factors. It's not just, there's nothing wrong with you if you feel it. It's like there are so many factors that are at play. Like from your childhood, a lot of us have been told to just be quiet, not make waves, not sort of create trouble, to not express opinions. A lot of us have been told not to really, not is just so much. We hear so much of it while growing up, that suddenly when you're put in a leadership position, or suddenly when you're sort of told to, when you're given power, you don't really know how to sort of deal with it, because you've never had power before. So it's not just you, it's like the world around you is actually like, it's not, something's not wrong with you if you're feeling this way. It's a lot of it is to do with the experiences that we've had and the way the world has been structured around us. Yeah. I'm going to take a pause here. Is there anything that anybody right now wants me to address at this point in our conversation? So this quote sort of is where I was drawing from, that we're more likely to experience imposter syndrome if we don't see many examples of people who look like us or share our background or are clearly succeeding in our field. So essentially everything that I was saying just boils down to exactly this. Okay. I was thinking about like how the imposter syndrome sort of manifests itself. Like what are the kind of behaviors that you start sort of exhibiting, or what you start trying to do, and what are the different, if you were to sort of say that, okay, these are the different kinds of people, these are the different kinds of personas that one adopts when it comes to being how we deal with the imposter syndrome. I would put it in these 4 brackets, where it would be like the perfectionist. Like give me maybe a show of hand or a thumbs up or whatever if this sounds like you, where you're just like, nothing is ever good enough because you're always trying to be perfect at everything. You're like so critical of yourself. You're like constantly, no matter, everybody's telling you you're doing a great job, but you'll find that one thing that you didn't do really well. Like, I don't know, when you're writing a story, but a lot of my experience is journalism on content related. So like everything will be great, but that one line that won't be great, or that one passage that wasn't great, or you write like, I don't know, 15 stories in a month, but that one story that doesn't land well, that's the one you'll obsess about. So you're just constantly thinking in this whole critical mode. You're never taking the time to sort of appreciate and enjoy what you actually have achieved. And you're constantly like, but that wasn't right. I needed to get that right. I'll be happy when I get that also right. But by the time you get that right, there'll be like five other things that you will be like, no, but now not this. I need to get better at that. The other way in which I see that the imposter syndrome tends to like sort of like the very harsh expectation that women tend to have for themselves. And even what I meant, like I'll stay specific to women here, but like even the other people who are at risk of feeling imposter syndrome is that we expect ourselves to be like natural geniuses at everything. Like, the learning curve for us should be like really, really small. That, if something has come our way, like immediately, like, and I know that I do this sometimes, I feel like when I can't crack it, when it takes me a long time to sort of understand something, or if I struggle with something, I am very harsh on myself when that happens, because I'm just like, okay, why am I taking so much time? And I just get very irritated with myself for taking like, I don't know why this expectation that, if it's come to me right now and it's new, I need to sort of know it immediately, to the point where sometimes I find myself obsessing about things that I really shouldn't. Like, I don't need to know it. My training and my life and my work doesn't need me to know it. And there should be no expectation for me to know something. But I will obsess about the fact that why can't I understand it? And why don't I sort of, why is it feeling difficult to me? The expert, I would say, is a bit of a subset of the natural genius, where you're trying to be an expert at everything, where you're like, the minute it comes in, like, you're just like, you understand it. And then, your expertise on that matter just means you're not happy unless you're like really good at it, even though it's something that might not be something that you need to know or you were trained in, or there shouldn't be a natural expectation that, this is something you should be good at. But you expect the burden that you put on yourself is that, oh my God, I need to be really good at it, regardless of what my training was, or regardless of what what is a reasonable expectation to have from somebody. And finally, there's a superhero, where you're just like, you're trying to do everything, trying to be everything for everyone. This also manifests with like, a lot of us feel the pressure to be great colleagues, great bosses, great daughters, great partners, great sisters. Like we want to do the presentation also, we want to write the story also, we want to do the, like, we want to have both the right brain chops and the left brain chops, but we also want to be great daughters who are there, you know, संगीत में भी नाच रहे हैं और रात को 2 बजे तक we are dancing at the संगीत, and the next morning, like the very stereotypical ads that we see, that, you know, this person can do it all. I know that we laugh at it on the on the cultural side, on the pop culture side, but a lot of the times, somewhere in your heart, you're trying to get validation from everybody, and you're trying to be that superhero from everybody. I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but like I also sometimes find myself like, you know, I'm just like, okay, this is not humanly possible for me to do everything. But even there, what is being left behind, I will think about it that, you know, but like I wasn't there for my friend, or I wasn't there at this time for this thing, or whatever, whatever, whatever. And somehow, have you ever noticed that it's the men never feel that pressure? The men never feel like that. There's so much like pride, even if they're sitting around like playing pool at their startup, they'll feel so accomplished. Ke, oh my God, मैं तो 1 बजे तक रात को office में था. Doesn't matter that they're playing pool. They're not feeling any guilt about being horrible sons to their mothers who are like waiting and to give them garam garam khana when they arrive. And the mother is also feeling very proud. Ke, "Arey, mera beta dekho kitna mehnat karta hai." So that whole thing. But like we tend to put so much pressure on ourselves that, you know, if you're killing it at work, that, oh my God, like we're not giving enough time at home, we're not giving enough time to our people, our relationships, and da da da. While the men are perfectly comfortable playing one role and playing one role well, and that's it. They don't really, like, a lot of the times, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of the times. Yeah, I agree. Like, you know, this, I'm sorry, I'm not able to continuously read. And one of the things that I'm not very good at is multitasking. I do one thing and I get really involved in that one thing. So do feel free to like sort of bring back what you're writing later when we have that conversation, because I might not be reading it at all. Yeah. The other thing that I do want to point out is that, you know, a lot of the times because of imposter syndrome, we also take it like, so the saddest thing is I spend so much time thinking about my imposter syndrome and feeling bad about it. But a lot of the times it's not because something's like, it's not you who's feeling imposter syndrome, but you're actually in a really horrible work culture. And it's very important to sort of, you know, have that distinction in your head. If you're constantly working in an environment where people are sort of ripping you down, where people are not like, there needs to be a sense of collaboration, there needs to be a sense of like building people up. But if you're constantly in an environment where people are just, you know, sort of ripping each other apart and are feeling, you know, everybody's trying to one up each other, it's natural to feel like you're not good enough, because you're like, we've been conditioned to question ourselves anyway. And then you're in an environment that is actively making you feel bad about yourself, is actively sort of, you know, trying to rip you down constantly. So it's important to feel like while there is one part of this with like, if you're here, you're obviously, there is some degree of you feeling it that way anyway. But you also need to think about, is it just me, or is it the work culture that I'm in? Is it the office? Is it the people that I'm working with? So which is why one of the very important things for me, and as I go ahead and write, like, you know, for the last few years, very particularly and very pointedly, I have asked people when I interview that how many women do you have in your office? Like, how many women are you hiring? How many women in leadership do you have? Because that itself sort of tells you a lot about the culture of a workplace. Because it has been my experience that when the environment is very, very overwhelmingly male, there tends to be this whole thing, this weird sort of, everybody's trying to rip each other. That culture tends to exist largely in, well, unfortunately, in tech startups, which also I'm a part of. I'm also part of a tech startup, but we're actually, I truly do believe we are part of, we're not the norm, but the exception. But yes, it is a fact that like the whole bro culture that sort of stems up because of all of them being young men who are super ambitious and take great pride in ripping each other down, and they can take it because the world is sort of geared to make them feel like that the cat's pajamas, and they are like nothing, they could never do anything wrong. But because women are not raised that way, because women are not led to believe, or we don't grow up believing that we're like the shit, it actually impacts us in a negative way. And this is not just my thoughts, there's actual research that says that when women self-evaluate, when women are told to sort of evaluate and sort of rate their own performance, consistently across cultures, women tend to rate themselves as lower. So if I was to rate my performance and I was to ask Ghazal to rate my performance, if Ghazal rates me a 7, I would probably rate myself a 5. Whereas for men, if their colleagues were asked to raise them, this is fact, this is actual studies and research that has found that men consistently rate themselves as higher than their peers rate them. So if Ghazal is rating a man 7, he's probably thinking, I am too bloody 11. I am, forget 5, forget 6, I am 11 on a scale of 10. A lot of the times that does happen. That's fact, that's research. So yeah, so you need to think about and this is especially relevant to the people who are getting back to the workforce or who are starting, just about getting into starting their career, as I think Amrita said at the start. So you do need to think about what is the kind of work culture and is it going to sort of make your imposter syndrome worse? Yeah. So I just I wanted to stop here. I mean, I know I'm sure most of you have, a lot of you must have read something, have your own sort of notions about how you've experienced imposter syndrome, your own thoughts about how it needs to what you need to do to sort of. I see that somebody's talking about Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In, and I'm actually very curious to know what you thought about it, because I personally feel that it actually makes the problem worse. But we can have a chat about that. So I would like to now sort of keep it open and invite questions, and we can do a chat, and I could answer specific issues that you're dealing with and talk about how I dealt with those situations when they came up.
Guys, you can either just switch on your camera screens and ask your question, or use the raise hand feature on Zoom, or just drop in a message on the chat box. Yes, Arti, please go ahead.
Hi, this is not difficult. This is very difficult to even talk about. Yeah, I was the one who wrote in the chat that over the years I've worked, and this I feel actually, as you said, it's debilitating for me to even go back to work, because I constantly keep thinking this, and then I go into that perfectionism loop, and then I'm overworking, and then I have a burnout. So there's so much fear that I'm unable to go back. So any ways of tackling it that you can recommend?
See, honestly, one of the things that I keep thinking about when I feel it, and it's a work in progress always. You never get to a point where, I hope there are people who get to a point where they just get rid of it, but that's a long journey. I think one of the things that actually helped me was just reminding myself constantly that it's not possible. It's is there anybody ever in the world who's so lucky that they are the only ones who keep getting lucky all the time? It's not possible, right? I mean, at some point you have to do something right. You can get lucky once, you can get lucky twice, but over a period of I've been working for what now, 14 years now. I use when I think about it, and when I get really paranoid about am I good enough or not, I'm like, am I that lucky that for 14 years consistently, constantly, and it's not, I'm really not, because I've had some spectacular failures also. They never tell you about the failures that you're having. Ghazal doesn't know. The person who wrote my profile didn't talk about that shitty story that I wrote when I was 21, and they didn't write about the interviews that I couldn't crack. So I know that I haven't been lucky in a lot of ways that I would have wished to be lucky. So then how is it that for 14 years consistently I've been? So I keep thinking about that it's statistically that's not possible. It's not possible for somebody to be lucky for that long. So I must have gotten something right at some point. And the beautiful thing is also to be at some point, you also have to be mindful of the fact that a lot of things that you don't know, you have to be a certain level of successful and a certain level of good to feel imposter syndrome. I truly believe that if you're really dumb, you cannot feel imposter syndrome. It's only dumb people who feel cocky and super confident about themselves. It's never the intelligent one. So having imposter syndrome, I don't know if it's a silver lining, but I truly believe that to feel imposter syndrome, you have to come from a certain level of empathy, intelligence, and a degree of achievement. So if you're feeling it, you have already checked 3 very, very important boxes when it comes to career. I think you're off to a good start in that way. It's a good check to have. I don't mean to be sort of, I'm not making light of the fact that you're feeling this level of imposter syndrome. I do feel if it feels that, like, just to be a little bit more serious, I do feel if you're feeling it to such a great extent that you're not able to sort of get back transition back to a full-time work sort of situation, maybe you can do it incrementally. Maybe you can start with something that is like not a, you know, it might be that you give more of yourself than you do than you're getting out of the job, but maybe just don't go from 0 to 100. If you're struggling to just get in, maybe start with like a situation that allows you to work 3 or 4 hours. I also feel what I've found is that when you work in organizations that do give you some degree of flexibility, that have a little bit of diversity when it comes to the kind of people that they're hiring, when their entire workforce is not South Bombay or South Delhi or very particularly Gurgaon or very particularly like any one part of the country, they tend to be a little bit more open. Those organizations tend to be a little bit more sort of receptive to differences and receptive to these. The other thing that I would really recommend is do your research when it comes to who it is that you're working for, not just the organization, because individual teams can be very different from larger organizations. So whoever it is that you're interviewing with, find out what their track record is. Like really do find out what their track record is in terms of what are the kind of people that they've hired, what are the companies that they've worked for, what is it that they're talking about in public. Yes, there are a lot of people who are very good at sort of being awful while presenting themselves in a very, very wonderful manner. But you will be able to sort of like, you know, get a couple of mentors who will be able to tell you that, you know, this is bullshit and this is something that you should be worried, like, you know, this is all a lot of, well, I'm going to say Sheryl Sandberg, Sandbergizing of their image versus actual like having, you know, like feeling passionately about a particular topic. So maybe do all of those things. Think about, you know, okay, how many women are working in this particular, do they have leeway? Do they have some sort of, you know, are they flexible in the approach with which they work? Those can be like at least good for starting points in terms of, are they going to prop you up or are they going to rip you down? Does that help, Aarti?
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you.
Okay, if there's anything at all, like I'd love to answer if there's anything that you want to follow on with and whatever. I'm very
I don't know. I keep thinking, should I like meet with a psychologist or therapist? I don't know that. I don't know if you can answer that or not, because literally, like, you know, I'm not getting back to work, and then that actually breaks your confidence even more.
Yeah. No,
It's
I
like a
understand
loop.
that. I'll always say, like, honestly, I'll always say that if you're at a, like, meeting a therapist is always a great thing. Like with the number of things that, you know, that go wrong in the world that we are living in right now, with all the stress that we've been exposed to in the last 2 years,
Yeah.
I don't know a single person who couldn't benefit with some amount of therapy in some way, shape, or format. So I'm never going to be the person who says that no, you don't need a therapist for this. If you feel that, you know, like that is a good, and you seem to like, if it's stopping anything that's stopping like you from doing something that you really intrinsically want to do,
Yeah.
and you're not able to do it because of external factors, obviously, of course, it's always a good idea to seek help in whatever shape, way, or form. Whether that help comes from therapists, like you know, an actual expert, whether that help comes in the way of having conversations with people, whether it's about finding a mentor somewhere. I can't imagine a situation where I'm just like, oh no, you shouldn't go to a therapist. So yeah, if it is stopping you from doing something, you absolutely should like consider. And if it's something that you can afford, then you should
Right.
definitely seek therapy. And because sometimes, you know, what I've also realized, sometimes things that are very big in our head actually have very simple solutions. It's just that we're not able to see them, and we're like, you're going round and round
Yeah,
and round.
it's like a loop you are stuck in.
Yeah, you're stuck in that, but the other person is very easily, you know, able to sort of break through the clutter and actually get to the reason as to why that's happening with you.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, we think that going to a therapist is going to be like a 6-month project, but it's really not. A good therapist will also, like, within 2 sessions, they'll be like, you don't really need help, you just
Right.
needed a little bit of nudge. So that could
Oh.
very well be the case. And the fact that you're actually seeking these answers, meeting, like, you're here on this panel, coming and talking to us, I think that's a great start. Yeah. So feel
Yeah.
good about yourself for that, if nothing else.
Yeah, thanks so much. So
Yeah.
some of your ideas really made sense to me. I'll implement those. Thank you
I'm
so
so
much.
glad. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Ar. Yes. What else? I'm the superwoman. I'm going to answer everything. सबके problems मैं solve कर दूंगी आज. Sorry, does everybody here understand Hindi? I was made aware of this, that I slip into Hindi we had a few people who joined in who were, well, my North Indian brain didn't compute immediately that they might not understand Hindi. And she's like, I don't understand what you're saying. I was like, I'm so sorry that I keep slipping in Hindi like this. So yeah, I'm sorry if I'm doing that again, where people are not really getting what I'm saying and I'm just going on in Hindi. So yeah. Anyway, what other questions? Wow.
Guys, you can just either just switch on your camera screens, just directly ask her a question, or use the raise hand feature.
Okay, so there's one thing that I actually would, okay, somebody has a question. Yes. 866505 has a question.
Hi, Sonali.
Hi.
Hi. I wanted to ask about the desire to attain perfectionism. Like, I have this desire to always attain perfectionism that it stops me from even putting my content out there. Like, I've been trying to I've been thinking of posting on Medium for quite some time. I'm a content writer, by the way. So yeah. So people like my content, but it's just in my head, like I feel it's never good enough.
Yeah.
So is there any way to tackle that?
Like, very honestly, I can tell you like a big flowery response, but I don't think there is any, the fact of the matter, and I truly believe this, I don't think that there is any one definition of good enough. There is a point at which you will feel, if you're an honest person, if you're an intellectually honest person, where you will realize that this is the best that I can do. There is that threshold that each one of us has, that, you know, okay, this is where I have peaked, and I know intrinsically that I can't do better than this. Like, say, for example, if whoever your favorite, like if you're a content person, whoever your favorite writer is, when you read them and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, inherently, you know whether you can ever get to the point where you can write like that, or it's just something that you will always read and you will always enjoy, but you will never be able to create that. So there is no one good enough, in a manner of speaking. So I think it's important to understand that. B, also understand that if you're constantly, the only way to get to your peak is to actually start putting stuff out there. You can never get to your best if you're constantly waiting for that best to happen before you start putting out, because a very important part of becoming your best is actually developing the thick skin, getting that horrible feedback, crying over it like a banshee and being like, oh my God, my life is over, and then picking yourself up and like starting the process again. Fortunately or unfortunately, like this is the bane of creativity, that it's always going to feel like, oh my God, if I had 2 more days, it doesn't matter that you started 3 hours before you were supposed to submit it. You will still wonder, "Arey, 2 दिन पहले चालू कर लेता, तो यार ये चालू कर लेती, तो it would have, you know, I should have started 2 days ago, or if I had 2 hours more." All of that is the bane of like the creative process. But like literally like, this might not sound like the advice you want to hear, but honestly, this is the advice that will work for you. The only way to get one, understand that you will have a peak and there will always be somebody who's better than you. There'll be a lot of people who are a lot better than you, and we have to accept that regardless of whether we want to accept that or not. And second, the only way to get to your best is by actually putting yourself out there. But also to realize that what I said about, you know, there are a lot of people that are a lot better than you. Also realize there are a lot of people who are a lot worse than you and are very cocky about being that bad and are very happy being that bad. So just don't constantly fixate on the people who you can never write like, or who you can never be like, at least in this stage of your life. But also feel that, you know, you can create so much better than a lot of other people are creating. So just put it out there. Because if you're not going to put it out there, if you're not going to actually open yourself up to that feedback, how are you going to get better? Somebody has to read you to be able to tell you whether you're shit or you're good or you're bad or you're somewhere in between, where on the spectrum you land. And that person is not going to be your mom, because she's going to love what you write, regardless of how good or bad.
Very true.
You have to put it out there. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
really helpful.
be nasty people. I know so many journalists who were so nasty to me when I started, and I was like, why are you so nasty? Like, you are so big and I'm so small. Why are you even taking the time to be so horrible to me? But like, it doesn't matter. You just have to put it out there, and there will be nasty people, but there will also be good people who will be like, okay. I had some fantastic editors. I still remember the day when I wrote something really, really dumb, and like, my editor could have been super nasty or she could have been super nice, but she just laughed like a hyena. My editor at that time just laughed and she's like, what have you written? What is this nonsense? And we just laughed about it. And then I never wrote like that. And then I got better and I got better and I got better. But I have to go through that abject humiliation where I felt like, oh my God, I want the world to open up and I fall inside, like full Sita level, like go into the world or go into the earth sort of a situation. But it just has to happen. There is nothing else. You have to deal with it. I hope that helps. I don't know your name, and I don't
It's
want to
Anam.
ask. You don't want to, huh?
Yeah, it's Anamika actually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Okay. And there will be good people. As horrible as there'll be a lot of horrible people, but the largest part of people who will just ignore it. Then there will be some who will be horrible, and then there'll be some who will be great. And then you have to fixate on the great. And you have to like, whoever's great, if they tell you, I want to help, then take them up on that offer. Be like, okay, you said you'd help. Now help. Now help me, please. So that's literally the only way to do it. You have to be like, just like, yeah.
So just one more thing I would like to ask you. So
Hmm.
what if everyone else likes it, but you kind of feel like it's not your best?
Which is a great place to be in, no? So you already know that you're already ceiling, like for a lot of people, you're already in the top 10% or whatever. But it's always a great place to be where you're like, if you're super happy with everything that you do, what is the next thing to look forward to all the time? So that's actually a really great place where everybody else feels that you're great, but you feel you have some more sort of steam there, or you have some more gas to sort of get to the next part, next to the get to the next stage in your career. That's actually the best place to be in. Like, that's how you keep growing, and that's how, if you're just like constantly in a state of satisfaction, then you're just never going to aspire to anything better. Which is not to say like there's that balancing act, which is like, there is one where there is hunger and there is like initiative and drive to do more, versus just never being able to be happy. You can feel, what I've realized, and maybe that comes with a little bit of age, that you can want to do better while also being really happy about what you've done. So I'll give you like a very real example. My book with Shah Rukh Khan, I know for a fact that this would not be the book that I would be that would be going into print if I was writing it right now. It would be a much, much, much better book. But does that take away from the happiness of the fact that I think it was one of the highlights of my career when that book came out, and that 5-year long journey sort of resulted in that book launch? I'm still really happy about the fact that it happened, and I'm really proud about the book. But I know that, in the 5 years since I've released that book, I've gotten much better. My thought process has evolved. The way I create has evolved. So that's the I don't think the objective is to get to a place where you don't question whether you can be better, but it's just a question of being able to be happy about what you've done and not just constantly poke holes in your own sort of, in what you've done and in your own achievements. Does that answer your question, Anamika?
Yeah, actually. And the thought process that you mentioned, I'm also trying to just use that again if my imposter syndrome just kicks in. Like, you can't really get lucky so many times.
Yeah, you really can't. You just cannot. Opportunities cannot come knocking unless you're like some, I don't know, some God's favorite child of some sort. Like, and I think like 0.001% of the world is that way. Most of us fall somewhere in the spectrum of like average, and we're blips. So it's fine. We're not that important. Like, the comforting thing is that it doesn't matter in the larger scheme of things. Everything just moves on, and you get over your worst embarrassments and you get over your worst stories, and that's fine. It's okay. It'll go away. You'll get better.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Cool. We have 9 more minutes, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
I had one question.
Okay. I don't know who's speaking.
I'm Kanchan. I don't know how to raise a hand.
No, that's okay. I just
I'm
wanted to know what.
Kanchan.
Okay.
So I started working in 2013, and from then on, whichever company I worked, I saw very few leaders, women leaders basically. And even now, I'm the only woman in the team that is there, the main team. So how do I deal with this? It does feel like I feel different. I mean, majority of the people I work with are men.
Yeah.
But the way I decided to look at it is that, I will create that position for women to come and make the mark. But
Yeah.
do you have any, tips that I could use?
That's actually a great question, and I've grappled with that myself. And I will tell you this. I'll tell you like an experience that actually shook me a little bit is in terms of like my reaction to it. So I was working for this. I did a project for this one company, and it's actually a really famous company. But what I realized there was that I was the only woman in leadership. So I'll tell you exactly how the entire experience there was. So when I joined there, because I was the only senior person, like I was the only senior woman, uh, it was very funny because initially everybody thought that I belonged to this one department in the company where it was only women. Because in their heads, they could not imagine that a woman in a senior position could belong to any department but that particular department. So I still remember the shock on people's faces when, and it was one of the, like, I come from a creative space, right? I come from a creative field. So it was not a traditional company. It was not like an accounting and finance type of company. It was one of the creative sort of fields. It was a media related sort of space that I was doing a project for. But that whole ecosystem could not imagine that a woman could actually be one of the top bosses in the company. That was one thing. The second thing was, so everybody at my level had a cabin. I was made to share a cabin with a guy who was at least 2 rungs lower than me, which was like, I was like, But I obviously felt it like the minute it happened, I was like, okay, this doesn't seem right. But I could not bring myself to actually say anything because I didn't want to make waves. Because I was also one of the younger ones over there who was just like, the other people who were in the leadership positions, like apart from the fact that they were all men, they were also much older than me. But it was still like, it's not a function of Sonali, it's a function of the role that you're given. But I didn't say anything. The third thing that happened in the course of those 6 months was, and thankfully it was just a project and not a job, was that I slipped into this habit of becoming like to be heard because they spoke in a very certain kind of like, very sort of crass language and very in a very loud manner. And it was all very kosher to be like very sort of rough, crass, even abusive in the way they speak. I started speaking in exactly that way because somewhere at the back of my head, I don't know at what point, I decided that the only way to actually be heard was by shouting, and was by shouting obscenities. So that was what my process had become. Like I'd become like a proper like asshole at that time because, and fundamentally, I'm not the kind of person who yells at people for making mistakes. I was not the kind of person who speaks in crass language because I love language. So I don't speak in that manner. As a person, I'm not geared towards that, which was creating a lot of dissonance in my head. Now coming to the answer, and when I left there is when I decided that the only way to really do this is by being that one person, if you're the only person, like unfortunately, I mean, I would not want anybody to be the only woman leader in their company. So I really do empathize with you that you're stuck in that situation and you're constantly stuck in that situation. But if you find yourself in that position, I decided very, after that experience that I am going to be that one person in every company who champions women consistently and constantly. Like, I don't care whether, what the policies of the company are. I don't care who traditionally, like, logically people are telling you to back and who they're telling you not to back. I am a big supporter of giving people second chances in terms of like, the resumes that you would not expect that they are the ones who get hired. Like they're not the first choices in people's heads because either they've taken a long break or they've like they have like a lot of mini breaks in their career. Like, okay, between there are like gaps in their careers or whatever. So And I have actually gotten even online hate when I post about people saying that, when I say that I prefer not to hire men. I've gotten a lot of like crap online. Oh, this is discrimination in the other way, and this is being gender biased and this and that and whatever. And I made the call that okay, it's fine. I'm not going to engage with this nonsense, and I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. So honestly, there is no one solution that I can give you. Okay, do this and it'll get solved. I think it's just about you decide who you're going to be. And I truly, truly believe that, when women prop up other women, the results are beautiful. Like when you create an ecosystem where you work, where, you might not be like, depending on what your sphere of influence is, whether it's company wide, it's department wide, it's only your team. But you want to be that person. And it's so deeply satisfying when you're that person who helps other people grow into like amazing roles, amazing, like, get to a really cool. And I've noticed this, that a lot of people, because, and I don't blame those women, like because we come from a place of insecurity, we come from a place of, it is so difficult to get to a certain point that we want to hold on to it very, very. So I've met women who go the opposite way, who make it harder for other women because they had it so hard. So somewhere they're taking out something on some women. And I've experienced that also. I've worked with those bosses also. I think it's only about deciding that who you're going to be, and then there are going to be like difficulties in being that person, and there is going to be some degree of hate, and it will take those 5 interviews extra that you have to take, and it will take that 5, like, because if you work largely with women, you'll also have to deal with their imposter syndrome, not just your own. And there will be times when you will have to take on the responsibility of like, no, you can do it, no, you can do it, it's fine. I didn't hire the wrong person. You are the right person for the job. Don't question yourself. It's okay. It's okay. But I think it's very rewarding. And I think like if you have that opportunity, you really should make the most of that opportunity. I feel like I not strictly answered the question, but did that help in any way?
Yes, it did.
Is there anything that you want to follow up with? Because I felt like I just sort of meandered into some other directions here also.
Like you mentioned, even I've had bad experiences with women who've tried to bring me down, and that has kind of made me question my choices in terms of who I want to support. I definitely want to support women empowerment, but when I see women, other women pulling us down, I feel like at the end of the day, I should support whoever has the capability. And
I don't think it's an either or situation. I'm not when I say that you should support other women, I don't mean to say that, don't hold them to the same bar. I think the only filter, and I know that it can be a bit of a juggling act, like, okay, all things like, but you can't say all things being equal, I will hire a woman, because all things are never equal. So it's like, it's like maybe understanding a little bit in terms of what led to this decision or what led to that. Like say, for example, all things being equal, like 2 people are really well, sort of are equally good in your assessment in terms of what they bring to the table. But the guy has had like, oh, he's worked for 7 years in the past company, and the woman who's applied has like maybe worked 6 months in multiple different companies with a little break. So traditional intelligence or traditional sort of knowledge will tell you that, okay, you need to hire the man because he has a more consistent record. But it's simply about having that, asking that question as to why that happened. Like one of the things that I never ask, and one of the things that I actually make it a point to say when I give hiring instructions or when I give JDs to people is, ask why they took a break, but don't use that as a barometer for like, if you're screening resumes, don't use a break as a reason to not send a resume to me. I say that to my HR a lot, as to, ask that question as to why that happened. Don't be an asshole while asking that question. Like, I'm perfectly fine with people taking breaks for their, for motherhood, for being a caretaker at home or whatever. I'm fine as I'm one to be fine, but I don't hold it against somebody. But so those are little things that you have to be mindful for. And to answer specifically the thing that you said, that, when you come across people who are being assholes to you and who are ripping you down, I keep telling myself, would I rather be an asshole or would I be wrong? I would rather be wrong than be like the jackass who did not give other people a chance. So it's just that, like, I'm okay with the fact that, sometimes you go wrong. You might not actually end up being treated the way you're treating people. There could be other baggage that could make you whatever, but I don't know. I'm just very okay with being wrong on things. So I'm just like, okay, karke dekh lete hain. Like whatever. Like if I'm happy with the kind of person that I am, it's fine. Other things can be sort of managed. So does that help in any way? Like that. This is the thought that I keep in my head, that I'd much rather just be wrong in my decision than be a bad person. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wish to be mean to anyone. Of course, I myself have taken a few breaks and I have switched companies. So I completely empathize with others who have done that. So that should be fine. It's just that I honestly am scared of working with other women. I've had that kind of bad experiences. That at one point I think it's good that I work with less women, whereas I actually want to see more women. But when I have seen the kind of people I worked with, I'm like, let's work with men. I think this might make me sound really bad, but my experience has been that.
Um, No, I get what you're saying. Like, I mean, I don't want to invalidate your experience at all in any case. And I know what you're talking about in that there are like some women can be extremely, extremely harsh because in some ways they are trying to prove a point that they can hold, they can be as sort of cut and dry as the men are, and they can be as ruthless in their decision making as the men are. I think maybe one thing that could help, maybe one thought to keep in mind is, are you holding the women to a different standard that men? Asking yourself actively that question, that the same behavior in a man is just like assertiveness or is being good at their job, while if a woman does it, we are holding them to a often we are holding them to a different standard. And it's always good to have a gut check in your head to think about am I holding the men in the male bosses that I had, am I holding them to the same standard that I am holding the women bosses to? I'm not insinuating or suggesting that you're not, but it's good to ask that question, because I've felt that there have been instances in my life when I've felt that I didn't hold them to the same standard. I felt like I was inadvertently being sexist being sexist and judging women harsh. So it's a good question to have in your mind. And ultimately, you do what your heart says you should be doing. But it's good to question, I guess, to question and assess. I know what you're saying. One of my worst bosses was a woman. One of my best bosses has been a man. But I've had like everything. I've worked with all kinds of people, in the spectrum. And I honestly can't say that men are better than men or women are better than men or whatever. It boils down to just individual.
Agree.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? I know we're a little over time. Is that okay, Ghazal?
Yeah. Sonali, we can take the last question. I mean, in case anyone wants to ask question.
No? Okay, since there are no questions, I just want to leave you guys with one thought specifically, and I've noticed this over and over again. All of this Gyanbazi aside, I think one of the most tangible ways in which imposter syndrome tends to affect us is in the kind of money that we ask people, in the kind of salaries that we expect, in the kind of financial decisions that we make. Now that I actively hire people, now that I actively sort of, recruit, and I actively, like, I'm responsible for people's growth and their salaries and all of that, consistently across the board, I cannot tell you how much women undervalue themselves financially and how much the men, like I have seen women ask 1/3 and 1/4 of what the men at the same experience level are asking. The men don't deserve what they're asking for, but the women definitely deserve a lot of the times way more than what they're thinking they're asking. There have been very rude shocks in my own career where I've just felt like I thought I was making good money, and I was like, yeah, this is what, this is what I should be making, and this is good. And then I found out that somebody with half my experience is making the same amount of money. I'm just like, what the hell just happened? Like those were really rude shocks. Even today, like a lot of the times, I'm just like, okay, I'm really bad at negotiating, and I can't do this and I can't do that. And it's okay. It's not about the money. Even if it's not about the money, what a company pays you is a direct reflection of how worthy they think you are. Do not lowball yourself, because what seems like a lakh today, or 20,000 or 10,000 or even 5,000 or even 2,000 in your pocket every month today has a compounding effect as you go ahead, because a lot of the times it's very difficult to deviate away from your baselines. It's very difficult to suddenly go from X to 3X. So make sure you incrementally, you start from a place when the load of what you're asking the company is not that much. You start from a healthy place. So a lot of the times I actually joke and I tell the younger kids in my team that whatever you're thinking of asking, ask double that, and then settle for at least 1.5 that. Like whatever you think you're asking, whatever you think is the good number to ask. I cannot begin to tell you the number of times when people like I've seen women lowball themselves. If my HR is here, she'd probably throw me out tomorrow. But there have been instances where I've been like, I have proactively told the person who I've interviewed that, hey, you should ask for more money. Like, don't say this to HR or whatever. So please, please, please do not shy away from asking for money. Like, that is a very, very, very important. It might not feel important when you're 21 and entering the workforce and everybody's earning shitty money, but it will really, really hurt when you see your peers 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line making 2x of what you're making. So don't lowball yourself. Yeah, it'll keep you from growing. In like, when you're making more money, there is more responsibility, you earn more, it opens up more potential for earning later. So do not lowball yourself. Like, it's okay, ask for more money and then figure it out. Like, raise to the challenge, learn it, upskill yourself, like learn extra skills to be able to like justify that money, but don't sell yourself short. Yeah,
That's a
that's pretty
great,
much
great
all I
tip.
have. Sorry, somebody was saying something.
I was just, Sonali, this is Ghazal here. I was just
Okay.
saying that's an amazing tip. And I think we all need to learn. We always do that. We need to start selling ourselves more and market ourselves more and understand how deserving we are. And it has been an excellent session. I mean, it has been eye-opening for me.
Thank you so much, Ghazal. Thank you.